Warning, 50 States, 50 Murders is a podcast based around true crime. Please be advised of the horrific details of murder, abuse, and sexual assault, occasional adult language, as well as brief humor. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello, and welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders. I am your host, AJ.
And I am your co-host, Sarah.
This is the podcast taking you, the listener, on an auditory road trip across all 50 states while we discuss 50 different murders. Thank you all for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 27.
This week, we are heading to Iowa.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of 50 States, 50 Murders. We were out of office last week for spring break. Apologizes for missing that, but it was a great week. I have no complaints. I did absolutely nothing. I think you were on spring break as well.
Yep, we were on spring break. We went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with the kids for a few days. So.
All right. Little trip to PA. What did we do in PA?
We shoved a lot in 2 days. We definitely took advantage of the pool and hot tub at the hotel. The smaller kids, we went to the aviary to see the birds.
Okay.
And on Thursday, they all went to the zoo, the Pittsburgh Zoo.
Nice.
And we rounded out with the Science Center, which is kind of fun there for all the kids to do. So it was a good time.
Okay, so the kids had a good time.
Yep.
Did the parents have a good time?
Of course.
Of course,
you know,
absolutely.
Our enjoyment comes from them, right?
Okay. Looks like it was a good time. Glad you got to do a little traveling.
Yeah.
Love to hear that. I want to give a shout out to Michelle. This week's recommendation for Iowa comes from Michelle. And thanks for supporting and listening each week. And I don't know where the recommendation for Iowa really came from. Didn't get a lot of explanation, but nonetheless, that's what we're going to be doing this week.
We'll be traveling to the Midwest to learn a little bit about Iowa. Some places to see, some things to do when traveling here. Some infamous murders from Iowa, as well as our very own murder case of the week.
All right, so Iowa, not too far from us here in Ohio. It's a fellow Midwestern state. Yeah, we'll learn a little bit about Iowa itself. We have some nicknames, some unusual laws. We've been running with that quite a bit. I like that. The Hawkeye State. And where does that come from?
Said to be a tribute to Chief Black Hawk, leader of the Native American Sauk tribe.
Okay, so some Native connections in there. And if you're a football fan like myself, college football specifically, University of Iowa, they're recognized as the Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes. So, okay, we got the Hawkeye State. We like the unusual laws. Those have been pretty fun these last few days. So it looks like we got 3 unusual laws. What do we got for Iowa?
First up, we have the cornbread in the state cafeteria. The Iowa legislature once passed a resolution ordering the state cafeteria to start serving cornbread.
Okay, cornbread is an absolute must in the Hawkeye State.
I thought that was super interesting for that to be a legislative thing.
Not a fan of cornbread myself. I'm not gonna lie.
I like it more when it's like in a casserole, like a cornbread casserole when it actually has the cornbread in it and like.
Okay, fair enough.
They make it with cheese and stuff. I think I like it like that, but.
All right. Well, if you go to Iowa, it seems like cornbread's pretty favored, so be sure to get that.
Next up, we have the one-armed piano players. Iowa law does state that one-armed piano players must perform for free.
Okay, I like this. I like this law a lot. That's cool. Hey, sorry you got one arm, but
You cannot get paid.
Yeah, you don't expect to get paid for this. You have to perform for free. Free and only free. Sucks to suck. Sorry, not sorry.
I
Cool.
feel like there's got to be some kind of ADA law against that.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't stand today, but I like that. I respect Iowa for that. Sorry you only got one arm, but it's free or nothing at all. Very cool. All right.
And last up, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, it is illegal to read someone's palm within city limits.
Okay.
So no palm
No
reading.
palm reading in Iowa. I feel like, Midwest, you kind of got like the Bible Belt going on. I guess that kind of makes some sense. Never had my palm read. Have you ever had your palm read?
I have. Yep.
Okay. What came out of it? Good, bad? Unknown?
It honestly was so long ago that I don't really remember. I just remember me and my sister used to, when we went to Myrtle Beach and on family trips,
Yeah.
we thought that was really cool. Like, come get your
Sure.
palm reading. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what they said, but
Okay. We were in, we did Massachusetts, Salem for our anniversary a few years back, and they had palm readings and tarot cards. And I remember, like, when in Rome, feel like have to do it. And but there was like a 2-hour wait. So yeah, it didn't happen. I'm not waiting 2 hours. I don't really believe in that kind of stuff, but it'd be cool to do it, just to do it. For the experience. And yeah, it didn't happen. So if you're looking to get your palms read in Cedar Rapids, probably not gonna happen.
Nope.
All right, we got the Iowa state flag. I like it.
It's not terrible.
It's not terrible.
It's not the worst one.
No, it's cool. We got a little red, white, and blue. We got an eagle in there.
It says our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain.
Okay, cool. We have the right to not pay one-armed piano players. Very cool. I like it. Iowa stands on business. Murder per capita. Iowa is 49 out of all 50 states for murder per capita. But I feel like our last 2 or 3 we've been pretty low on the scale. They have 1.7 murders per 100,000 people. So if you're in Iowa, I feel like you're in a pretty safe space for the most part. Probably not going to lose your life if you go out there on vacation. You probably won't get murdered. So that's cool. I know you had some top places that you pulled up in Iowa. So go ahead and kick us off. What do we got?
First up, we have the Field of Dreams, built for the famous 1989 movie Field of Dreams, and located in Dubuque County. It's also known as the most magical place on dirt. It's the host of many baseball tournaments, as well as a tour of the infamous house located on the property. It's also the host of some local events, which coming up on August 30th, Tim McGraw will be performing there.
Okay, Field of Dreams. I've always wanted to see this. I think that would be pretty cool. You know the saying, if you build it. Oh, you don't know.
I don't.
Have you ever seen the movie?
No.
If you build it, they will come.
Oh, okay. No,
Okay.
I did not see the movie. I should have been a little bit more prepared. That's my fault. My fault.
All right. That's the homework. Got to watch that movie. Great movie.
I'll report back next week.
Yeah, it's this baseball field, and like literally just in the middle of a cornfield. And they actually had a few MLB games that they played here not that long ago. I don't know if they're making that an every year thing, but I do know that last few years they've played an MLB game there. So I definitely would agree. All right, up next, it looks like we have what is known as the Grotto of Redemption. This is located in West Bend, a small town in northwest Iowa, and it is the largest man-made, awe-inspiring grotto built single-handedly by a Catholic father, Father Paul Doberstein. Shout out to Father Paul. Completely by hand with the help of Matt. Let's just call him with the help of Matt. We love our complicated last names. And I'm not even going to take a stab at that. Matt was a parishioner and a father grieving his successor who completed his work after his death. It is a complex of 9 awe-inspiring grottos, all built by hand with exquisite attention to detail. It is made of ornamental rocks and gems into concrete, depicting a different scene of the life of Jesus Christ. So I know that was like a lot of different words jumbled in there, but basically just a pretty cool statue.
Yeah.
looking at the photo here, we'll throw some photos in the TikTok like we always do. Grotto of the Redemption is recognized as one of the top places to see if you're in Iowa. And if you like, checking things out that are man-made, such as this, maybe something cool to see. Our last thing here, what do we got for number 3?
Next up, we have Iowa State Fairgrounds. For 11 days in August, it is a fairground, but for the other 354 days of the year, the Iowa State Fairgrounds is home to auto shows, livestock exhibitions, flea markets, antique shows, concerts, trade shows, and more.
Okay, that's cool.
Probably some good fair food. I bet you they serve cornbread.
Some funnel cake, some cornbread, all that good stuff. What are your thoughts on carnival rides? Are we letting Emmy ride carnival rides?
I do sometimes, like
Okay.
the small ones right now. I mean, those ones are little, like those little cars that go around in like a circle, very small ones.
I feel like I've seen some crazy videos and pictures. Like, you got like a roller coaster style esque machine, and it's just on bricks, and it's like moving back and forth, just ready to give any second.
Yeah, fairs and carnivals, like pop-ups, are not, my first idea of fun for something to take, my kid to on a regular basis, I should say. But it's, only once or twice a year
Yeah.
that you do in the summertime. And like I said, we let her ride the small rides. Emmy is like her mom and dad. She loves the games.
Okay.
So she wants to pop the balloons and throw the basketballs into the hoop and do things like that for prizes. So
nice. A future degenerate. Love to see that.
So far, it's between that and the Ferris wheel. She loves the Ferris wheel.
Okay.
So, and a carousel if they have one. Those are her top favorites.
Well, if you're ever in Iowa, make sure you go in August.
Okay.
All right, Iowa. They got a few things in there. I don't know if it's necessarily like a pinpointed state that everyone's like dying to see, but when you talk about some of those things in there, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, like, if you just happen to be there, there's some things to do while you're there. All right, so we learned a little bit more about the state of Iowa. One-arm piano players are not getting paid to play. You can go check out the fairgrounds, the grotto, watch Field of Dreams if you haven't. If you're listening, it's a big tie-in to Iowa. But now that we've went over some of that, let's learn about some infamous Iowa murderers before diving into our own murder case of the week. It's 49 out of 50, relatively safe when it comes to murders.
Yeah, one thing I have learned by looking at all these states are some are a little bit harder to find, but you can always find some crazy cases in each state that we've looked at so far. So some famous murders in Iowa include the unsolved Villisca axe murders of 1912, the 1993 Iowa murders, and the Iowa City Supple murders in 2008.
Okay.
So first up, we have the Villisca axe murders in 1912. In June of 1912, the 6 members of the Moore family and 2 guests were found bludgeoned to death with an axe in their home in Villisca, Iowa. This case remains unsolved, and the murders are notorious for their brutality and the lack of definite resolution.
That's wild.
Yeah,
so,
I know we talked about last week. It's a little unheard of to still have unsolved murders in today's world.
Yeah, so I guess police just show up to the house, 6 people just bludgeoned to death, and just no idea who did it, what happened, why. Yeah, just whoever did it. I mean, it was 1912. Assuming they're probably not with us any longer.
Mm-hmm.
But they went free.
Next up, we have the Iowa murders. In 1993, 5 people, including a drug dealer, his girlfriend, and their 2 daughters, were murdered in Cerro Gordo County, Iowa. This was a case that involved a drug trial and a methamphetamine manufacturing operation. Dustin Lee Honkin and Angela Jane Johnson were convicted of the murders, with Honkin being executed by the federal government in 2020.
I like when these names really match. Like Dustin Lee Honkin, that just sounds like a guy cooking up meth. Like
Angela Jane Johnson.
Angela and Jane Johnson. Those are 2 like methamphetamine manufacturers if I ever heard them. So, okay, that's pretty spot on.
And next up, we have Iowa City Supple murders in 2008. On Easter Sunday night, March 23rd, 2008, Stephen Supple, a former bank, murdered A former banker murdered his wife, Cheryl, and their 4 adopted children in their home in Iowa City, Iowa. He then committed suicide by driving his minivan into a concrete abutment on I-80.
Wow. Okay.
Cause of death was blunt force trauma.
Interesting. In a weird way, I don't know if this makes me sick and twisted. I don't know. But, when people decide, hey, I'm going to take my own life, I always kind of find it interesting the way they do it. Because I feel like there's levels to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that are just like, yeah, I could see that. If I was going to make that ultimate decision, I could see that. And then there's some where it's like, yeah, I don't know about that one. Driving head on at 80 miles per hour, that's interesting. But nonetheless, it did the job. So
I wonder if it was planned that way, or if he was just like, feeling all like guilty while he was trying to flee the scene or something.
It was Easter. Maybe he was just like, Jesus, take the wheel. And then he didn't because he did something terrible. And it ended up in blunt force trauma. Okay, so we had some pretty infamous murderers in the state of Iowa. We have our own murder case of the week. We were in New Jersey last week. I made mention that, I don't necessarily love doing cases that involve children, but I figured, you know what? We already started. We might as well just keep it going. So, fair warning, we're going to have back-to-back cases that involve children. To kick off this week's episode, I want to paint a scene for you. I want to put you, the listener, but more so my co-host. I want to put you in a little bit of a scenario. For those listening at home, just kind of envision how crazy this call would be. And for my co-host, Sarah, I kind of want to just get your first reactions. Let's say that you just so happen to be a parent of a younger daughter, and you got a lot on your plate. You're a working woman. You're busy. You gotta keep the bills paid. You gotta put food on the table. You don't really have anyone to watch your little one. I'd say in today's world, this feels like a pretty normal scenario. People have kids. Things don't work out. A lot of times you like to at least hope that you can work together to co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
Not odd, not weird by any means.
Nope, not a stranger to co-parenting.
Yeah, co-parenting is a pretty normal thing in today's world. Perfectly fine. However, as I continue painting this picture in your head, it does take a little bit of a slight turn here. Let's say you're at work, and I know no one loves work, but like I said, you got to do what you got to do. You probably don't want to be there. You see your phone ringing. I'd imagine getting a call from your ex first thought's probably annoyed. Why are you calling me at work? Why aren't you texting me? But then maybe you think like, oh, maybe something's wrong. I probably should answer it. So that's what you do. Let's say you answer the phone call and you are informed from the baby daddy that, hey, I lost the kid. I can't find the kid. I mean, what? Just right off rip. And for what it's worth, very nonchalant, not a lot of worry, pretty chill. But I don't think there's any reason to worry. But I just wanted to let you know, I can't find the kid. I mean, where does the head go at that point?
I would be leaving work immediately. Number one. And of course, your first reaction is, what do you mean you lost my daughter? She's 10 years old. She doesn't have a way of transportation to get around, or young, I should say, either way.
Yeah, explain. How do you mean you lost the child? That's
and why are you so relaxed?
Yeah, why are you so chill about it?
Yeah. As crazy as a call like this would be to take, that's exactly how our week's murder case begins. Aisha Langford was the mother to this week's victim, 10-year-old Breasia Terrell. Aisha lived with her daughter Breasia in the city of Davenport, Iowa. This story takes us back to July 10th, 2020. Yep. Aisha had to work, and she was allowing her daughter to stay the night for a sleepover with her brother Dell. Her brother was 8 years old at the time of this story.
Okay, yeah, so far, still nothing too odd. You got to work. Someone needs to watch the kid. You can't take your kid with you to work. That's fair.
Yeah. I think that's what is a little bit difficult with this case for me, is having just one child.
Yeah.
I think it would be difficult for, your siblings. They want to spend time together.
Sure.
But I do think it's a little bit odd, no matter the co-parenting situation, I guess, for her daughter to be going to stay with her ex, who is not the father of her daughter. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to dig into right here. So the sleepover took place at the apartment of Henry Dinkins. Now, Henry was the father of Breasia's brother. However, he was not Breasia's dad. He was essentially her stepdad. But Henry and Aisha had separated and moved on. So, again, before we jump into any immediate judgments or assumptions, if you're thinking right away, why would someone allow their 10-year-old to stay at a man's house who's not their father? I just want to say, like, I personally have a step-parent, as well as, I mean, I never call her this, but I guess technically, by definition, I have a stepsister, or I have a half-sister. She is my mom's daughter and my stepdad's daughter. So, same relation, basically, as the story. Now, my mom and stepdad are still together. They never split up, but let's just pretend like they did. I don't really feel like it'd be weird for me to go stay the night at his house. And as a child, like if I'm staying at his house and I'm having a sleepover with my sister, I'm not seeing anything too crazy just yet. Okay. The dynamic is a little different. I get that, but again, in today's modern world, I feel like there's just so many different living situations and family dynamics. And, as you always say, Sarah,
it takes a village to raise a child.
That's correct. It takes a village. So, hey, if that's where it comes to, she wants to stay the night with her brother.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, on top of just having one child, I have a twin sister.
Sure.
So both of our parents are the same. We don't have any other siblings.
Right,
besides,
right.
Now I guess our stepbrother and stepsister, but that didn't come until way after adulthood. So
right.
It's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So now that we have continued painting the scene and explaining how our victim this week, 10-year-old Breasia, was at the apartment of Henry Dinkins, we can get back to the phone call. Henry Dinkins made a call to his ex and mother of Breasia. The call was to let her know that while everything was okay, he lost Breasia and wasn't quite sure where she was at. Not only was she missing, but he wasn't sure for how long she had been gone. With this call, Aisha called 911 to file a missing person report and headed to the apartment to meet with Henry and the police.
Okay, so a few things real quick. Again, hey, all's well. Don't get your panties in a bunch.
All is not well.
I just wanted to let you know, before you freak out or do anything crazy, I lost your daughter, but not only did I lose her, but honestly, I really don't even know how long she's been gone for, if we're being honest. I don't know. I don't know if it's been an hour, a couple hours. Either way, she's not here. Now, what was crazy is, I feel like first thing, if you wake up and your kid's not there, I have to imagine your first step is 911. Mm-hmm. Man, let's get on the horn. But he didn't do that. He lost her. He can't find her. And after a couple hours, he called his baby mama to let her know, and then that's when she had to call and make the report. So, now we're starting to get a little odd here, a little strange, but all right, nonetheless.
Yeah, your first thought would be, what have you done to find her? I mean, did you call 911? Have you, knocked on neighbors' doors? Were you looking outside? What have you done so far?
What are we doing? What's been done thus far?
Yeah.
Besides calling me. So, no, everyone knows the deal. It's a murder podcast, so spoiler alert. This story does revolve and end in a murder. That's not a surprise to anybody. So, with that being said, I watched a few docs about this case, and I know we were kind of texting back and forth about it. And we have Henry Dinkins, who was the responsible guardian for this child at the time. And his behavior throughout the beginning of this was, I hate that it ended in murder, because it really was funny. Like, it was comical. Like, in a frustratingly comical way, I guess, is the best way to put it. Because what happens is the police show up to the apartment complex to find Henry. Now, Aisha, who was the mother, she got there before the police. naturally, they're fighting. They're having it out. I think that's pretty normal. If you're the mom, you show up. Baby dad, you're probably pretty pissed off. You lost my child. But it was funny because this guy is just like, he's mad that she's mad.
Yeah.
And he's like going to the cops. He's like, just
playing victim.
Bro to bro.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, man, my chick's just giving me the hardest time. She's really on my case. Not really concerned that he lost his child. He's just more like upset that like he's in the doghouse, So, I mean, honestly, like as a guy, I think we can all relate to being in the doghouse. I might be sleeping on the couch tonight. You can vent to your guys about like, oh, we got into an argument, whatever. But to lose a child,
yeah, and be so laid back about it is very, very, very suspicious. I mean,
I'm in the doghouse now, boys.
Yeah, I mean, for you to be in trouble for not taking out the trash,
yeah,
like we've asked you 36 times, you didn't. You
didn't do the dishes like I was asked. I forgot to switch the laundry.
Room. Yeah, that's a little bit different, and I could see why you'd be annoyed, for.
Man, she's on my case again about the laundry, man.
Yeah, but for just completely not knowing where my daughter is when I trusted her and left her with you is beyond me, that he was shifting blame so quickly and completely deflecting and trying to deflect away from him. It was insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what we say today, the audacity.
Yeah.
A lot of audacity to be upset that someone's upset with him. So, yeah, I mean, if it wouldn't have ended in murder, it would have been a lot easier to laugh about the way this guy handled this entire ordeal from start to finish. But, it's keeping in mind that it is a murder case at the end of the day. Like, it's a little bit harder to find the humor in it. But if you get a chance to look into this case, because sometimes I feel like we don't always do justice just talking about it, pull it up. Go check out this guy's behavior, his actions, his entire attitude towards this whole thing was just frustratingly comical is like the best way to put it. So, yeah, they head to the complex. They find Henry and Aisha arguing, fighting over the situation. You got Henry deflecting all the blame. Again, he's mad at her for being mad at him and complaining to the officers about how she's just giving him all this grief. And, yeah, just pretty crazy situation that the police are pulling up to.
So the first question the police asked the mom to confirm is that this is Henry's apartment, right?
Yeah, this is his apartment, correct?
And Aisha said, yeah, I guess so. This is where he told me to bring her. While this was where Henry was living, it was technically his girlfriend's place.
All right, so this is going to be my first time out of the day. This was a little bit of a red flag. So, what do you mean you guess so? Like,
yeah,
I kind of don't really know what you mean by that. So, at the start of the story, I said that I don't really feel like it's weird per se to, you have someone who's dropping their daughter off with I guess we'll call him the ex-stepfather. They have a shared sibling. I don't really think that's weird. But regardless of the dynamics, I don't know if I don't have a child. That's why I like having you on here to give your side of the story or give your opinions. But I don't know if I ever want my child. It could be grandma's house. It could be ex-stepdad. I don't know if I ever want my child staying somewhere that I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also find it a little bit odd that, it says earlier that they were co-parenting well.
Yeah.
For their son. And I think it's odd that she doesn't know where he lives.
Yeah, it just...
How do you not know where, the co-parent that you're raising this child with, where he actually is living at all?
Yeah. It's the I guess it really threw me off. I mean, maybe it's apples to oranges, but when I was a child, elementary school, middle school, we would do sleepovers. And I remember, now my mom was okay with me staying the night at places, but she always made sure that she familiarized herself with the other child's mom And I mean, it was probably great for her because I remember like some of my mom's best friends ended up being like my friend's parents.
Yeah.
So like she made a lot of good friends out of it. And I remember like not only did she have to meet the parents, come into the house, you know, do the just kind of like looking around, making sure everything seems all right, but we'd have to do like 2 or 3 play dates. Right. I guess is what you would call it today. So I guess I'm curious, like, you know, what for you, what's the sleepover rule look like in Sarah's house? What's that all about?
This is definitely a hot take, and I know my daughter's a lot younger, you know, she's not 10 yet. She's just now starting school, so I know at 10 years old, my niece, they like to have a ton of sleepovers. They go, you know, they kind of take turns at the different girls' houses in softball. But I am very much of the opinion of no sleepovers with friends. Like I said, I know it takes a village, and I've been very blessed to have the village that I do have and the family I have. So I don't really need to, you know, solicit like friends or the help of anybody else outside of my small circle.
Sure.
I just think it's very hard not to know who's going to be in that household.
Very true. I mean, true.
I could make friends with, you know, Emmy's friend's mom, and
maybe they got an uncle
coming
over,
or an older sibling, or the neighbor stops by.
True.
You know, there's just a lot of unknowns that happen to other people's houses that I just truly don't feel like it's worth the risk. And I understand that I made so many good memories at sleepovers, but it's one of those, like, is the risk is the risk worth the reward, I guess? And I'm all for her having sleepovers at my house. I'm more than happy to host all the time. I'm happy to host her friends, their parents, everybody.
Yeah.
But it's just as far as her sleeping at somebody else's house that's not honestly immediate family member is something that's a no for me.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would classify that as a hot take. I think that's I think that's fair, for sure. Yeah, and again, it's slightly different. That's more so friends. This is technically family, so
yeah.
You know, I guess I just wanted to see what you thought on that. And again, my biggest thing is going back to like when she said, "I guess so." Like you don't even. Yeah, you're not even sure.
Yeah, I don't think that she asked the right questions, and that's not to victim blame at all. I mean, I
definitely
think
not.
We said she was overwhelmed. She had a lot of work to do. She trusted this person, so ultimately the blame is 100% on him.
Absolutely.
Just if we are asking for my opinion, which I've mentioned before, I like to be in control of knowing everything that's happening, so I would have definitely been asking a lot more questions.
Yeah, let me do a little walkthrough, because again, while we said it's his apartment, technically it was his girlfriend's apartment.
Right, and I'm very curious if she's ever met the girlfriend, because that's another thing I'm kind of big on too.
For sure.
Who's around my kid? And I've dated people prior to having children that have had children that, like, I asked before I meet their child to meet their child's parent. I think that that's like important for a parent to know, or at least want to know who their kid's going to be spending time around.
Absolutely. It's beyond fair, for sure. So police continue asking Henry questions about what he had done, and he made mention that he didn't really know anyone in the complex. You know, he was kind of new to the location. So again, weird. The mom's saying, I guess so. He's saying, like, you know, this is brand new. He doesn't know anyone in this complex. So, no, he did not knock on any doors. He didn't ask anyone specifically. But he had been riding around all day with the Sundell. They're looking. They're keeping an eye open. Again, you know, not to continue putting myself in this situation, but I have to imagine I'm knocking on every door. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this child? Have you seen my daughter? This is what she looks like. Have you seen it? I mean, I kind of deal with the old social anxiety. We've mentioned this in the past. But when it comes to something like that, I mean, if I lost my dog, I'm knocking on doors. Hey, I lost my dog. So to lose a child, like I guess I really don't care if I don't know you. I just want to know if you've seen this child. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a little bit of a red flag nonetheless. So Aisha, the mother, She's in tears, broken up, emotionally distraught. She's called everyone. She's doing all that she can in the short time that she's been made aware of this. But, it's noticed that when she shows up, she has her name tag on. She's coming straight from work. I mean, you're at work. You're already hating life. I'm at work in the evening. Don't want to be here. Then you get this call. You're beyond. I can't even imagine how taxing that would be on you mentally. So you're here. This guy's mad at you for being mad. I mean, he's just super chill. He's just kind of like tripped out. Like, it's almost like he was treating it like he lost a phone charger. Like, I can't believe I can't find it. It's so crazy that it's not here. But yeah, just the whole thing. It's getting slowly going from not weird to continuing to just get more and more weird. So, yeah.
So, Breasia being a 10-year-old, she was in a place that was unfamiliar. A place that she did not know anyone around her. Also, she had a slight vision disabilities as well as hearing disabilities. So the concerns, at least for her mom and the police, were very high. Police see no signs of forced entry into the apartment. So Henry said she must have woke up and wandered off.
Yeah, she's not from here, but,
Has nowhere to go, no means of transportation, but she probably just woke up and started going for a walk.
Let's head on out. Let's see what's going on.
Which this would be completely out of character for her, but police didn't have much to go on other than this at first. Police did what Henry didn't do. They canvassed the area, knocked on doors, asked if anyone in the area happened to see a little girl matching her description, but they had no luck.
Okay. So, yeah, doing what he should have already done. Going out, knocking on doors. So, Breasia's yet to be found. No one's seen her. There are flyers that are put up. Word's been spread around town along with the Amber Alert. But thus far, no tips, no calls, no sightings. And rightfully so, wrongfully so, police really only had one real suspect at the time. And that is our guy, ex-stepfather, Henry Dinkins. And, you factor in his attitude to the whole thing. I mentioned this just a second ago. He treated losing his child like a phone charger. It is like, not the biggest thing in the world, but it sucks. Like, this is just a really big inconvenience. He was the last person to see the missing person thus far. And also, there was quite an eye-opening detail that was revealed from his past.
Given that Henry was the main and only suspect, police decided to look into his background to get a better idea of who they were working with, and if anything stood out to them. So Henry Dinkins was a man in his 50s at this time, but there was a past charge on his record from when he was 17. In 1990, Henry was charged and convicted of third-degree sexual abuse of a 5-year-old. So it turns out our main suspect for this week's murder case was also a sexual predator.
Okay.
I do want to kind of stop there for a minute.
Yeah, have at it.
I will say, too, I find it very concerning. I know in a previous episode you had asked me how I feel about, like, just dating, as a single mom. I think the one thing that every single parent should be doing, especially, actually just every single parent, should be running background checks on anybody that they're allowing into their child's life, especially when you're bringing somebody into your home. I think that sexual predators often prey on young single parents
who need help in a way.
Yes, who need help, who are, she's working a lot. She needs help with her child.
Struggling with bills,
Yes.
just...
So I just think it's very important to do background checks on anybody that you're letting into you and your daughter's home.
That's fair, yeah. I mean, I've never personally done a background check on someone, but I can't imagine in today's world that it's not that hard.
Nope.
I feel like everything's on the internet. If you really want to find something, it's there. It's there for easy access. So,
and I know I will say everybody has a past.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
I just do feel that certain things are inexcusable. We talked about that last time,
for
too.
sure, yeah. Our last episode, we mentioned that, it's what makes America great is that we are the land of second chances.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, hey, everyone's entitled to a second chance. But
Yep. But before I started dating as a single mom with a young daughter, I would be looking into their past before entering into a relationship and letting them come into my home with my daughter.
You know, he was 17 at the time. I'm not excusing anything, but I feel like you'll hear stories where, like, he's 17, she's 15, you know, like, okay, there's, like, you know, your kids. At the end of the day, if you're 17, you're a kid, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't, you know, he's a senior, she's a freshman, like, okay.
Right.
You hear it, but no, like, a 5-year-old, like, that's just...
Yeah, at that point, like, that's something that's...
This guy's sick in the head.
Yeah, that's part of who you are as a person.
This wasn't an accident. This wasn't like...
Which we've talked about, like, can that really be 100%, can you rehabilitate somebody like that?
Yeah, you don't bounce back from...
No, we're talking a senior in high school and a kindergartner.
Yeah, it's disgusting. So this is like... This is a monster that you're dealing with, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just someone who made a mistake as a kid. This is just a monster. So... our last episode, we covered the case of Megan's Law in the state of New Jersey. You had Megan Conca, who was murdered by her neighbor, who was a sexual predator. Now, the Concas expressed that had they been aware of the fact their neighbor was a predator, she'd still be here. We talked about how this was the 90s, same generation that me and you grew up in, and things were a lot different back then, you know? Be home by the time the street lights come on. Not a lot of parental supervision, but again, there was the sibling supervision. You're always out with your friends, and at the end of the day, for the most part, there's probably always a parent that's peeking out the door, making sure that everyone's all right. Now, I feel like there was most certainly some guilt that was felt by the Concas. You know, hindsight, you know, I'm sure that they probably felt like, oh, I wish we would have known more, kept an eye more, but this was before sexual predators were really disclosed, so maybe a background check wasn't as readily available back then. I don't know if the Concas necessarily faced a ton of judgment at the time. For this case, I'm going to kind of bring it back around. We kind of just went to it, but for this case, I don't really want to be a judge, jury, executioner. I don't want to point fingers from the microphone. That's why I have you here, so you can do that. I think we were both on the same page for the most part about the Concas. You know, we were going to listen and not judge, maybe silently judge, but nothing crazy. But yeah, I wanted to throw this back your way. So you have a mom, takes her child to the ex's place, and turns out the sleepover, he's a sexual predator. And rewinding back to our Nebraska episode, you discussed single parenting, just kind of being more mindful. So I don't want to say that Aisha did anything intentionally. We're not necessarily pointing fingers, but I mean, there has to be, do I want to say blame? At some point, there's got to be some sort of responsibility for the choices that were made.
Yeah, this one's a little bit difficult for me. I think I try really, really hard not to judge another parent because I feel that we all struggle with different things. Like I've said multiple times, I've been super blessed to have the family I do, to have the co-parenting relationship I do with her dad, to have family on her dad's side of the her dad's side of the family,
Sure,
that are more than willing to help too, and so we have a really strong village with our family. So it's difficult for me to put myself in her shoes because I've never been in her shoes. I will say though that for me personally as a parent, I think that there were a lot more questions she could have asked. I think that I just wish that somebody would have asked a little bit more questions for Breasia's sake.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody did. Getting further into this case too, I think the girlfriend of Henry Dinkins should have also been asking some questions.
Yep.
I think that she was just, I mean, a little bit failed from the people in her life that were supposed to protect her the most.
Yeah.
However, this is the responsibility of the person who took her life. So it's hard to shift blame.
Yeah. I agree. We're not necessarily not pointing fingers, but I do think that with being a parent, there is some responsibility that comes with who you surround your child with.
Yep. I do also kind of want to just throw this in there for some reason, but obviously for anybody listening, especially our close friends and family, if anybody's ever in a position that they feel they have to, that they need to work or something is crazy, like your kids will always be 100% safe with me in my house, and don't ever resort to, just, I guess, somebody you don't trust or somebody that you don't have 100% knowledge of, which I know this case is a little bit different because it was, the father of her son.
Yeah.
But I do want to throw that out there that my door's always open.
I like that. I appreciate that. I'd say the same for ours too. Door's always open. Sometimes I wonder, listening to something like this, like maybe Aisha didn't have the privilege that we have as far as like having that village that we have surrounding her. Maybe this was really her only option. So
right. I am curious to know where Breasia's dad was.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing much about him in the case, so right. I don't think that he was really involved. I also want to note that it is a little bit difficult for me when we discuss single parents and dating. I will say that my mom never really dated until we were pretty much in high school and like a lot older.
Yeah.
So I know everybody always talks about, generational curses, I guess, but I think that is something that I got from my mom that is definitely a positive, definitely not a curse. Like, I think that just her being able to, just focus on us for, those first years, I think that's something that has made me into the parent that I am.
I like that. Yeah. And I want to take this time to use my second time out of the week here. Seems like a good time to rewind to our last episode. I kind of made a joke about how we both came from broken homes, and we mentioned how you get 2 times Christmases, 2 times birthday gifts, but there's a lot of bad that comes with it. But I mean, at the end of the day, the more I thought about it, like my stepdad becoming part of my life was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Just an awesome father figure in my life from day one. And I think whether it's intentional or accidental, when 2 people have a child, parents are called to their duty to just go above and beyond for that child. That's your job now. But for step parents, they kind of like randomly fit into this place by choice. They didn't choose to have this child. They're here because they want to be here. So they're not obligated to be your parent. And the lucky ones like us, me and you, like we have these awesome step parents, and along with having a great person in my life, my stepdad Kirk, he also gave me an awesome sister, Allie. So like in the story with Dell, I got an awesome sister out of this whole ordeal, and none of that would be possible if it wasn't for my mom and Kirk meeting one another. So I think regardless, home split, broken, we can joke about it now, but I just want to take a second out of this story because I think you can hear a lot of horror stories about step parents.
Yeah.
And how things can go so wrong. And I think when you have a great step parent like us, it's like it's normal, but really it's not always normal. And stories like this, it just with me and Kirk, or with you, Dave's awesome dude. Like just very lucky to be in the situation that we've been in.
Yes, absolutely. Me and my sister also did have a stepmom that was with us for probably about 20 years, or married to my dad for about 20 years, who had definitely played a pivotal role with helping raise us on our dad's time, so we've been blessed in every possible aspect. Like I said, Dave came around, more of our like late teens. But both of us, they're just Dave's a huge role model. It's somebody I look up to and can call for anything, to help with anything at any time, and he treats us just like his own. My dad and my previous stepmom are no longer together, but my dad's wife is also awesome. So they've done an amazing job picking partners that have treated us just like their own children. Yeah. And for that, I'm forever thankful. I think a lot of people are not as lucky. So it's crazy that we're in the same room and we both had such good experiences with.
Yeah. Shout out to our parents for
absolutely,
surrounding their children with the right people. It's not always that way. And unfortunately for this week's case of Breasia Terrell, her stepfather was a sexual predator who at this time was the prime suspect of her being missing.
The first big break came from our unintentional hero, Breasia's little brother, Dell. Kids are always watching, always, and always listening, even when you aren't aware that they are. They can have great memories. Dell was interviewed regarding the night before and the morning of the disappearance, and he was beyond forthcoming regarding some very interesting details. Dell recalls the details of the night of the sleepover. He tells detectives about how he was in the living room playing a game, but just with his dad's girlfriend. His dad was in the bedroom playing games with his sister. There was a little bit of a jealous tone throughout his explanation of the details because he wanted to be included with his dad as well. He said that he was mad that he was left out. After the games, they ate and went to bed, and he woke up and his sister was gone.
Yeah, this part was pretty interesting to me because I'm sure you know more than me. I think sometimes we take for granted like how smart these kids are sometimes. They're always watching, they're always...
It's crazy that, I can tell Emmy to put her shoes on like 12 times.
Yeah.
In the morning before we go to school, and I'm like, hello, are you listening? But she'll be watching TV and I'll say something to Gary and she's like, I heard that.
Yeah.
I like whisper from the other room. I'm like, well, you surely didn't hear me tell you to put your shoes on 20 times, but you heard, me whisper something. So they definitely are always listening. They're paying attention to our body, like our
it's energy.
Yes, they pay attention to everything. They pick up on everything, and it's crazy. I do want to say with what I just said about Dell being a little bit jealous, this is also where I am questioning Henry's girlfriend. Like, why are you in the living room playing a game with, your boyfriend's son?
Yep.
Like, why is
we
your
all together?
Yeah. To me, we should be playing games as the four of us. I think it's very odd that
are you
a
in a
grown
bedroom
man,
with
a 50-year-old, is in a bedroom with a 10-year-old playing games, and he's not even spending time with his son. I find that to be very odd, and I feel that she would be questioned. That would be something that would never
again, this
be
case
able to
just
happen on my watch.
Continues to get more and more odd. So Dell's recalling things, but also at the same time, like, he's smart, but he has the naivety of a 8-year-old where, he's jealous that they're in the bedroom together, but unfortunately they probably weren't having a good time. They were probably, those other things I'm sure you could imagine, but, in his mind, his dad's paying attention to his sister. They're doing fun games in there, and he wants to be part of that. So, it's like he's aware that things are going on, but maybe not necessarily all the way aware of what's going on. So
I think he unknowingly kind of just put it all out there of what was actually going on, but I don't think he clicked everything together, which I hope he did not.
So the detectives, the questions flow into the following morning, asking if they went out looking for a sister. They did, in fact, go out looking for her, yes, but he does make mention that his father, Henry, had a little side venture while they were out looking for her. His dad stopped to go fishing. So Dell wasn't allowed to get out of the car, and oddly enough, his dad didn't seem to have any fishing poles, which, usually for fishing, poles are required. But they were at a body of water, and he was informed to stay in the car while he fished, so that's what Dell thought. Keeping in mind, Dell was only 8 at the time. there's no reason to necessarily doubt his dad fishing, but also I think a lot of times, like we just said, as adults, it's really easy to overlook like how smart these kids are. Surely something seemed off, even if he didn't quite realize it.
Dell didn't see any fishing poles, but he did recall some things that certainly set off alarms for the detectives. Henry had a bottle of bleach as well as a knife that he cleaned and washed off while out fishing. He also made mention that when they were out fishing, they got struck by the water and had to get pushed out. Detectives asked if he could recall where they went fishing. During the interview, he was unsure, but they ended up going for a drive, and he was able to recall all the turns and landmarks and led detectives to that same body of water where they went fishing that morning.
Yeah, so just sitting in the room itself, he wasn't able to say like, oh, we were at this lake or that lake, but yeah, they got into a car, and sure enough, he recalled all the different twists and turns, and there's that McDonald's, turn here, there's this, that, turn here, turn there, and yeah, it ended up laying them to the specific body of water that they, quote-unquote, went fishing to. Now, this is a part of the documentary that I watched on this case that just really stood out to me. Just how hard it would be to be a detective in a case like this where, you have a missing child. I have to imagine that working a case like this probably consumes you. It's all you can think about, bringing this child safe to her parents. And you have this information now. You have this 8-year-old boy who's telling you body of water, bleach, knife, stepdad's a sexual predator. I think also the experience of being a detective. I'm sure you're probably beyond aware at this point, like she's dead. She's not, she's not just missing. But as a professional, you can't really just assume that legally even. Like, you have to continue to proceed as if she's still out there, and you have to continue to tell the mom, we're doing all we can, even though And then on the flip side, I can't imagine how hard it'd be to be a parent. Like, the mom knows. I'm sure she knows. But, again, you want to stay hopeful, positive, and just continue to assume that she's out there somewhere. So that just, this part with all the details, I just think it'd be so crazy, so hard to continue to stay positive when deep down
Investigators begin pivoting at this point. It slowly goes from a missing person case to a potential murder case. The initial search was to find Breasia and bring her home to her family, and it turns into trying to figure out where her body could be and then figuring out what happened to her. Detectives interview Dell once again, and they're able to pull more helpful information. He talks about how he saw his dad and sister leaving very early, walking out the door. This gives them an eyewitness as he left with her, as opposed to her wandering off by herself, as he once explained to the police.
Yeah, so at the jump, when Henry's pissed off because, baby mom's mad at him for all this stuff, yeah, he said, she must have just got up and wandered off. But yeah, his second interview, Dell's second interview, he clearly sees them two walking off together, which debunks the entire concept that she wandered off by herself. So this helped police put together a timeline. They were able to pinpoint surveillance cameras showing him arriving to a gas station around 3:30 a.m., the morning Breasia went missing. He returned after the sunrise, and that's when him and Dell went out looking for her. Now keep in mind, he left with her, went to the gas station, but then when he returned, she's gone, and that's when she's missing. So I know that we love mentioning those little computers that we all carry in our pockets that we call cell phones, and they looked into cell phone pings, and at the time they were able to see that around 7 a.m. that day he was near a Walmart. So sure enough, they pulled up Walmart cameras, and they show Henry around 7 a.m. buying some Clorox. Now, you and my wife are pretty good friends. I think it's pretty well known that my wife can be a neat freak at times, Sorry, the house is a mess. I need to clean the house. She's really big into that. I can't ever recall a time her going to Walmart at 7 a.m. to buy Clorox. That's a pretty odd purchase, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty strange. I don't ever recall a time where I had to go to Walmart at 7 a.m. for Clorox, but I mean, nonetheless. So fast forward 8 months into investigation. March of 2021, a group of fishermen stumble across a human skull. Additional remains in the area were found. An autopsy was conducted, and what everyone feared the most essentially came true. This was the remains of 10-year-old Breasia Terrell. The next part, slightly gruesome, so warn in advance. During autopsy, they found a bullet wound in the lower part of her jaw. So, first things first, this guy shot his stepdaughter in the face, which is just crazy to think about. Then there was a second bullet that traveled down her spine, a third bullet that went through her right shoulder. With the body located, with autopsy showing a grand total of 4 bullet wounds in total, detectives could now officially shift this case from missing persons to a murder. Detectives remained with one and only suspect, Henry Dinkins. They knew it had to be him, but it was now their job to put the pieces of the puzzle together and help bring Breasia justice. They had their eyewitness testimony of her brother Dell, the surveillance footage, his past criminal record, the fact that he was the last one to see her alive, and all in all, just his general behavior towards all of this that had transpired. Detectives also got one final big break that really helped their case. There was a man local to the area who came forward and said that around the same area her body was found, months back, he just so happened to push a man who was stuck in the mud, who reflected Henry Dinkins' characteristics, as well as detailing a car that matched the same one Henry was driving, a maroon Impala. This now gave an additional eyewitness, putting Henry at the scene of the crime.
This was all enough for police to charge Henry Dinkins for the murder of Breasia Terrell, and the next step would be proceeding in trial in hopes of locking him away for life. He was being tried for murder in the first degree as well as kidnapping in the first degree. Detectives know he did it, but the next goal was to figure out why. They believed he sexually assaulted her, but this could not be proved. Thus, they were unable to charge him for any sexual assault charges. While they were able to see the bullet wounds during the autopsy, the body was decomposed beyond a point that would help them determine any DNA evidence.
Okay, so they're able to charge him for murder. They can see the bullet holes. They're assuming, this is a guy who sexually assaulted a 5-year-old in the past. They're in a room alone, playing games. More than likely, unfortunately, he probably sexually assaulted her and then murdered her because of this. They couldn't prove that, again, because it'd been so long. Her body sat out over winter. It's in the water. Any DNA that would have been on the body was gone. So I continue to say on this show, one of my biggest goals is for you, the listener, to learn something new every time you turn in. For this episode, I was able to learn something new myself. And during the trial, this case takes a pretty bizarre turn. Henry and his defense team made a request that I personally wasn't even aware of. So, as Americans, as we all know, we have the right to be tried by a jury of our peers. This is something that sets our Justice Department apart from others. The way that works, a jury hears your case, while the judge sits in and makes sure that everything basically flows smoothly. He's there to just make sure everything goes as it should. The jury decides if your perp is guilty or not. And if it's determined that they are in fact guilty, then your judge is going to proceed by issuing a sentence. I know we all know this, but what I did not know is that you actually, as an American, have the right to waive a jury of your peers. And this is called a bench trial. So what you do is you just say, hey, I'd prefer the jury not sit in on this. We just want to present our case to the judge himself and let him make the decision if I'm guilty or innocent. I might be a little bit ignorant to legal proceedings, but I've never heard of that prior to this case. So if you've already known this, disregard, but if this is new to you, then we learn something new together. Pretty cool. All right, so you're probably wondering, why would someone choose a bench trial? Why would you want to not be tried by a jury of your peers? Well, Henry's concern was that, hey, these people are going to be well aware that I was a sexual predator, and they're going to immediately write me off. As soon as they hear the fact that I did that, they're not going to hear anything else. They're just going to immediately assume that I was guilty. Thus, I prefer to take my chances with the judge and not deal with the jury.
Through it all, at the end of the day, the bench trial moved forward. Henry's team called 0 witnesses to the stand, and he decided against taking the stand himself. The goal was to prove that there was not enough evidence that he did it. And ultimately, as you can imagine, Henry Dinkins was found guilty. Judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, assuring that he would never be free to hurt another person moving forward.
Yeah, so the bench trial didn't necessarily go as they hoped. I think it went the same way it went how they expected it to go. I think he knew from the jump that he was going to be found guilty. And they didn't really have a major defense. Like you said, 0 witnesses. He didn't take the stand himself. The goal wasn't necessarily to prove he was innocent. The goal was just to prove that he wasn't guilty, basically. And, I mean, that was probably his only option. Not a great option, but, yeah, at the end of the day, they were able to get justice as great as you can. He'll be doing life in prison. And it's a sad story in general. I think when you are talking about a murder case that's, maybe it involves a stranger, or maybe it's like a love triangle, a crime of passion, those things happen. Or like our New Jersey case, it was the neighbor. Mm-hmm. But in this instance where it's a trusted a parent, it's essentially what he was. He was her stepdad. You really hate to hear that. That's a big bummer. And for myself, I try to find some closing points, key points to close out to, try to find something in these stories that you can learn from. And I think that's the one that stands out to me the most is, again, we've mentioned this already, but just be aware of who you're surrounding your children with. Like you said, do a background check. Mm-hmm. It's not anything that's complicated. At the end of the day, a simple background check could save your kid's life. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could have been prevented, and it really made me thankful for my step-parent personally. Hearing this story, it really stood out to me like, okay, so these great step-parents, it's not a guarantee. Like, you could have something like this where this little girl was murdered by her stepdad. Like, that's just crazy to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. My stepdad, my stepmom, and my dad's wife all have never put me in a situation where I feel unsafe, where I haven't been treated just like their own child, and for that I'm forever thankful for. Yeah. And the way they treat my daughter the exact same way.
Yeah, so shout out to all the step-parents doing their thing. Shout out to all the parents who are picking the right step-parents to be around their kids. And I had another point here. You kind of touched on it. I wanted to bring it back up because I didn't mention it in the trial. So Henry Dinkins' girlfriend, she was one of the witnesses. And she goes into a story about how, she wakes up at 3 a.m., he's not there. And then he comes rolling in, after the sun comes up. And they ask her, they're asking her questions, and she just mentions how she didn't really, she knew something was up, but she didn't really think to ask questions. She did say, like, she was scared, which, I mean, I can get that, sure. But I don't know. You know my wife more than a lot of people do. I mean, I couldn't imagine heading out at 3 a.m. and rolling back in when the sun comes up. I mean, you want to talk about being in the doghouse?
Yeah.
I'm in the doghouse.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm definitely very suspicious of his girlfriend as well, because like even just the game thing is very odd to me that they would be in different rooms.
Yeah.
And that in general, that he would be in a room with a 10-year-old girl is something that I just could not even fathom happening around me with anybody's child.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I trust every adult that I obviously interact with, I just don't, that's just so unnecessary to me. And that she didn't ask any questions when they're leaving, middle of the night. I mean, it just seems very odd that nothing, there was nothing done from her standpoint, because she probably should have been the one that called the cops.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that a call should have been made immediately. You're coming home after the sun comes up, and the child that you took with you is not coming back home with you. That's red flag. And I don't want to speak out of turn. As I don't want to be the guy that's like finger pointing and blaming. I just feel like at the end of the day, there's a movement, which is great. Women need to look out for women, and, be aware, be cautious, ask questions, don't be afraid to speak up. And I think that's great. But at the end of the day, I feel like Breasia was let down by a lot of women in her life, which really sucks to see. None of them are the murderers. None of them were responsible. I get that. Not placing any blame. But I just feel like at the end of the day, she was not done right by the women in her life. She was put in these uncomfortable places. And I think there was a lot of looking the other way. Like you said, why are you in another room when we're in the living room? Why are you in the bedroom? Why aren't we all together? Why are you leaving with this girl at 3 a.m? Why are you not bringing her back? I felt like a really weird towards his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And maybe she was scared for her life. That's very possible. But I don't know. It really sucked to see her let down by the women in her life. So
I agree. And as women and especially as parents, I think we need to look out for not only each other, we need to look out for each other's children.
Yeah.
I mean, like if I have children at my house, they are just like my children, and I'm staying up with them until they're going to sleep, which is really hard for my niece now that she's becoming more the age of like a preteen, because they like to stay up really, really, really late. But I'm staying up the whole time because I just have to know what goes on in my own home, and I really wish more people would take that stance.
Yeah. So, all right. That's our case for the week. It was another tough one. It was a frustrating one, I think, more than anything. Really hated to see the way that this played out, and to be that young and to have someone that you trust go against you like that. And the 4 gunshot wounds, like that part, just like rough. One wasn't enough. 4, I just... Yeah, there's a lot that was pretty crazy with this one, and unfortunately, that's how this case ended up. So, we were in the state of Iowa. If you build it, they will come.
They will come.
All right, there we go. You're going to watch the movie this week. That's your homework.
Okay, I know. I couldn't even remember what we said earlier. Sorry.
Field of Dreams. There's a few things to do. Check out the fairgrounds. See the ball field. Yeah. All in all, I've never been there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've never been there.
I have.
Have you?
Yeah, we discussed it in Nebraska a little bit. Yeah. That I actually, when I lived...
It was on the border.
Yep.
So you crossed the border.
Yep, every day for work. So personally, I probably won't be going back to Iowa.
Yeah, you can check that one off the list.
That one's off the list. I worked there for 7-8 months. But
okay.
Other than that, I would probably rank it pretty low, probably 47.
Oh, 47.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a stinker.
I know. Well,
okay.
I'd like to visit some more states that I haven't visited yet, so they're going to be up more towards the top.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
And I just don't think there was anything that I didn't get to see. I made a lot of awesome friends there when I was working, but other than that, I probably will not be back.
Oh, 47. All right. Sorry, Iowa. Okay. Sorry for all the one-armed piano players in Iowa, too. Shout out to them. We hope you're surviving, paying the bills. Mm-hmm. All right, as we begin our departure from the state of Iowa, and conclusion of episode 27 of 50 States, 50 Murders. We want to continue to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Each and every week, we'll continue covering a new state as well as a murder case that happened to take place there.
If you've not already, please be sure to follow and subscribe. We are on Spotify, TikTok, and now on YouTube. Be sure to tune in next week for episode 28.